Hi all, today we're going to have a look at a thing called UV unwrapping. So this is slightly different to what we've been doing so far, but this is um, looking at the way we interact materials with objects. So I'm going to start by creating a sphere, a polygon sphere, and I'm going to apply a material to it. So let's right click. I'm going to choose assign a new material. And it doesn't really matter what material we give this one, so I'm just going to give it a Lambert for simplification purposes. And instead of giving it a flat color like we have in previous lessons, I'm going to click on this little checker box to the side and give it a texture. And from this, I'm going to choose checker. So here we have checker, and it's got a checker material applied to it. However, if you see here, you won't be able to see that checker material. That's because we need to press the 6 key. So remember, we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keys for different views. 6 shows you the 6 key shows you the texture view. So now I can right click back on that. Oh, you can't see that, which is off the screen. Right click and choose material attributes. So we have the checker material. I'm going to give this a slightly different color as well. So I'm going to choose that checker, and I'm going to make it a nice horrible green and red checker. Okay, so we can tell that it's not to do with this, but this button doesn't indicate that it's a checker material. It just indicates it's a material. And I've got this horrible green and red Christmas checker. Very good. And I can press this little arrow button here to go back to my main material. Very awful. Okay, so the UVs are the way that our 2D material interacts with our 3D objects. So let's have a look at this. So in my same modeling menu, we have all our great menu items here that we've been using. But if you keep going to the right, there's one called UV. And it's UV not to do with ultraviolet light, but it's just another coordinate system. We've already used the XY coordinates. We've used X, Y, and Z. So UV coordinates are just by default numbers that haven't been used. So we can see here that we've got our horrible checker material, and we've got our object. So these, each one of these faces represents a face on this 2D world. So I can click on, for example, this polygon here, or this one here, or this one here, and you can see this one sort of got half red, half green. Same with this. So we're actually choosing the way this corresponds. So if I move this UV shell, so once again we use the same marking menu and the same controls to move things around, I can change how this object interacts with material. I can rotate it using the rotate tool that we've used. And you can see how this is interacting with the object. So as I change the object here, it changes the UV map. Okay. And that's a pretty horrible look. Lastly, we can scale it just like we do in, we can scale our UVs just like we do scale our objects. As you can see, as the UV map gets smaller, the checkers look bigger, and vice versa. Okay, cool. And we can just use a whole bunch of different UV projections. So I can choose UV, project it from a plane. So if I look at my UV map here, that's just taken the entire object and put it on a plane. So it hasn't really been interpreted in a 3D way here. So when we put it in the 3D world, it looks kind of funny unless you get it from the exact right angle. But if we turn this around, it looks kind of warped. But it's an interesting pattern, but fairly useless. Another one we can do is UV cylindrical. So this projects a cylinder around our object to work out how to make our UV map. So that's pretty good, except for these ones at the top get a little bit confused and a little bit wobbly here too. Can you see that? So we have all these ways of projecting our UV object. But the simplest way to do this is just to use UV and automatic. And that just splits up our UV map into several pieces, as you can see here. So we've got a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, a piece here, and a piece here. Now, this looks pretty horrible for our checkerboard, but if we wanted to paint a material, for example, this would be very good because I'd be able to paint a face on here, I'd be able to paint hair, and I'd be able to paint all these things. So this is a useful way to make a more specific UV map. Okay, good. Just to show you this on a clearer picture, what we're going to do is I'm going to use a UV map. I'm going to create a texture that has a different image. So I'm going to choose my color and right click and break connection. That's going to get rid of that map. What I'm going to do is choose that color again. And this time I'm going to choose file, and you'll have these, I want you to download this from the, download these files from the class website. And they're all there. So if I choose in my class website, hold 1 second while I find the file. I should have been a little bit more organized for this, but and it's smile.jpg. So you can see here my smile, I've got my UV map, but these pieces don't really match up to it. So I'm going to choose UV shell and I'm move this around until it sort of fits. So if I move this face, this part over here, this part is going to move up here, and as you can see, this part here is representing this side here. This is where I want my face to be. So I'm going to slide this up over the face. See that? And as I slide that over the face, we can see the face looks nice and central. And if I think the face is disproportionate, I can change that size as well. I can change that size by scaling. There we go. And so we've created a UV map based on a texture. But what I want you to do is we're going to create a box. For that box, I want you to create a new texture, assign new material, which is just right toward the bottom of this. So right click, assign new material. And I'm going to choose just a lambda again. It's a very simple material for this exercise. It's fine. And for the color, I'm going to choose another file, just like I did before. So it'll pop this up and I'll choose file. And for that file, I'm going to choose in the same folder, it's called box.jpg. And you can see here, I've got a funny looking texture. It's not quite worked out. So let's have a look at our UV map and how our 3D object interacts with our texture. You can see we've got all these boxes here, but they don't fit to our box. So what I'm going to do is choose UV and automatic. I'm going to go back to my UV editor. And each one of these boxes, I'm just going to choose UV shell, my arrow, And I'm just going to move each one of these so it fits onto each face. And I'm going to scale them down. Like that. Next one. And it doesn't even matter which one they go on for this, because these are all identical. So it wouldn't even matter if I put all of these right on top of each other like this. Oops, I'll show that one being edited. So you can see here's the one I've got selected. And I can slide that into the same position, but there's a little bit of white around that, so I can scale that down again. Or I can just move it to a brand new one, which will look much better. Same again with this one. Move that to the center of there, and I'm going to scale it down. So we can use these individual handlers just like we do in the program itself. And we can use those shortcut keys that we talked about, the Q, W, E, and R, to change our different, from move to R being for scale. So those, when we have our 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keys for our display. But straight underneath that we have Q, W, E, R keys to change whether we're moving, selecting, scaling, or rotating. So we don't have to use those shortcut keys if that's a bit confusing. We could just go over here and press those buttons as well. There we go. And it's not exact, but if we look at our cube now, we can see each one of these polygons is mapped on the UV map so that it has a texture. Let's have a look at our object. We can see now it looks more or less like a box. Okay, so that concludes this lesson. Thank you very much.